My sister's kids turned criminals. Now they're ruining the neighborhood and I called the cops. When I came home from work, I noticed something was off. The shed door was wide open and the padlock that usually kept it secure was broken. I store a lot of soda cans in there along with some tools and other equipment, but today those cans were gone along with some of my gardening tools, a machete, and even a full gas can. I checked my security cameras right away. And to my shock, I saw my 3 nephews, yes, my sister's kids, breaking into my shed with a hammer. They took everything, the cans, the tools, the gas can. I immediately called my sister, and of course she and her husband denied their kids would ever do something like that. That is, until I showed up at their house with the footage from my cameras. My sister and her husband were furious with their kids for robbing me and skipping school to do it. I got most of my stuff back, but they'd already cashed in the cans and spent nearly $200 on junk food and video games. I demanded that my sister pay me the $200 plus the cost of the broken padlock. Suddenly their anger turned into excuses. They started blaming me, saying I knew they were struggling financially with 3 kids and a mortgage. I told them they had 2 options, pay me back or I go to the cops. They kicked me out of their house, calling me heartless for even suggesting it. This wasn't the first time my nephews had stolen from me. That's why I got the security cameras in the first place. I gave my sister 2 days to decide how to pay me back. Instead of working it out, she and her husband blew up my phone with messages, trying to guilt trip me, but I wasn't backing down. The breaking point came when my eldest nephew sent me a picture of him flipping me off, holding a soda can like it was a trophy. That was it. I went straight to the police and filed a report, providing all the evidence I had, the footage, the texts, and even the picture of my nephew giving me the finger. I didn't care about the money anymore. This was about standing my ground. My nephews broke the law, and if my sister and brother-in-law weren't going to hold them accountable, I would. The police assured me they'd be dealing with it. It turns out my nephews weren't just stealing from me. After talking to my neighbors, I found out that cans had been going missing all around the neighborhood. Though we couldn't prove it was my nephews, the timing and behavior matched. These kids weren't just acting out, they were wreaking havoc on everyone. I kept my family in the loop about what was happening. I thought they might turn on me for pressing charges, but to my surprise, they were all on my side. Apparently, my nephews had been causing trouble for other family members too. This wasn't an isolated incident. On Saturday, the police came to arrest my nephews. They went from cocky little thieves to sobbing like babies when they were put in cuffs. My sister and her husband tried to blame me again, but there was no turning back now. The kids were facing charges for trespassing, larceny, vandalism, and harassment, and honestly, it was about time. I stayed strong through the entire ordeal, even when my sister and brother-in-law showed up at my house, banging on the door, begging me to drop the charges. I refused to let them in and told them if they didn't leave, I'd call the cops on them too. The breaking point for me was when I decided to file a small claims lawsuit. I wasn't just doing this for the money, I wanted to teach them a lesson they wouldn't forget. I sued for $500 to cover the stolen cans, the broken lock, the upgraded security, and the harassment. A friend's father, who's a lawyer, told me I had a strong case, especially with the camera footage and all the texts and evidence I'd collected. My sister and her husband freaked out when they got the notice. They begged me to reconsider, but I was firm. They had to pay for what their kids had done. After a lot of back and forth, Bill, my brother-in-law, came over to my house and handed me $500 in cash. They caved. While my nephews avoided jail time, they didn't get off easy. They were sentenced to over 100 hours of community service, which was the best outcome I could have hoped for. The oldest nephew, of course, didn't take it well and caused trouble even during community service. He fought with everyone, showing his entitlement and refusal to change. But his brothers? They started to realize the consequences of their actions. They even came over to apologize to me. They admitted that following their older brother's lead wasn't worth the fun they thought they were having. They wanted to earn back my trust, and I was willing to give them a chance. Meanwhile, the eldest nephew continued to spiral. He broke into my shed again, this time armed with hammers, causing more damage. He was arrested again after his fingerprints were found all over the crime scene. He even threw a hammer through my window. This time, his parents didn't even try to protect him, they let him face the consequences. It turns out he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which added a layer of complexity to the situation. But he still refused to take responsibility for his actions, blaming everything on his diagnosis. He spent a month in juvenile detention and came out on probation, but he wasn't the same kid anymore. He was isolated and angry, refusing to interact with the family. As for me, I've moved on. I've mended relationships with my 2 younger nephews. They've earned back my trust, and we've rebuilt our bond. They're trying to turn things around, and I'm glad to be part of their lives again. But the eldest, he's still on probation, and his relationship with the family is fractured. He's not welcome at family events, and it's clear he's got a long way to go before he can earn back anyone's trust. At the end of the day, this whole ordeal was exhausting, but I stood my ground and I don't regret it. Sometimes you have to teach people, especially family, that actions have consequences.